once again. And my experts for the day, Salil Kapoor ji is just joining in, Rakesh Gupta ji, VP Gupta, Ajay Wadhwa, and we have, besides Tarandeep today, we have Mr. Satyajit Goyal with us. Thank you for being here, Satyajit. And he is going to join Tarandeep in explaining us the basic provisions, and then we take it up for discussion. So with that, Panu sir, as Wadhwa Sahab explained, is probably on a trip to Bombay, and he may join us through the proceedings sometime if it, if his time there permits him. With that, a welcome to all the people who have joined in. And now I hand it over to Mr. Ajay Wadhwa to move it forward from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vashne Saab. Thank you for being with us again, once again. I don't have much to say. I'll just simply hand over. So Taran, is your topic first?
So first will start.
So what we should do is, we should try and finish these in about half an hour, 45 minutes, the ones with you and Satyajit has, so that we can come down to VP Gupta ji. Charitable trust wale mein, I've got a lot of demand from people saying the charitable trust they want to understand, because it's very extensive proposal. So over to you, Satyajit. Start.
Yes. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm going to discuss the proposed amendment in section 144B. Now, section 144B contains the scheme of faceless assessment and lays down the procedure how the assessment has to be carried out. But the proposed amendments are basically a procedural in nature and for better implementation of scheme, what I have observed. Now, I have identified 4 key changes in the proposed amendments which deserves the attention of you all. Now, the first one is the formal introduction of section 147 in the faceless scheme. Now, as per the existing provisions, only section 143.3 and 144 assessment were part of the faceless assessment scheme under 144B. But now, as per the proposed amendment, the reassessment proceedings under 147 has also been specifically included in the faceless scheme. So that's basically again a procedural amendment in the nature. The second one is a very important one, and it requires attention of all. That is that now, as per this amendment, the serving of draft order has been done away with. So now basically the draft order will only be served on the eligible assessee in terms of 144C. With respect to all other assessees, draft order will not be issued to the assessee, and the generation of draft order will remain between the assessment units and the National Faceless Assessment Center. So assessee will not be involved in the draft assessment order stage. This issue was subject matter of litigation before the courts, that where the assessment unit has not served the draft order on the assessee, whether it's a jurisdictional defect or whether it will result in nullification of the assessment proceedings. So that has been done away with. So no draft order will be issued unless the case is covered for eligible assessee in terms of 144C. So next in line is a very important and a welcome step, the amendment which has been brought in, and that is the grant of personal hearing is no longer discretionary in nature. Now, what has happened hitherto, as per the existing provisions, earlier CCIT, Chief CIT and DG were given the power of approving the request for personal hearing. But now, as per the amended provisions, the assessee may directly request for personal hearing to the assessing unit, and the assessing unit shall have to grant that personal hearing without there being any discretionary power. So it's a really welcome step. And the usage of the word shall, basically it's in line with the judicial view that personal hearing must be granted to the assessee, specifically for the income tax matters which requires oral submissions as well. Lastly, I would come to a very important and interesting amendment which has been made to 144B, and I would like my experts also to come in and to express their views on it. That amendment is basically omission of subsection 9 of 144B. What does subsection 9 contain before the amendment? Now, subsection 9 contains, I'll read it for the benefit. Notwithstanding anything contained in any other provision of this act, assessment made under subsection 3 of 143.3 or under 144 in cases referred to in subsection 2, other than cases transferred under subsection 8 on or after 1st day of April 2021, shall be non-est if such assessment is not made in accordance with procedure laid down under this Act. This means that if the assessing unit does not follow the procedure laid down in 144B, such assessment orders passed after 1st of April 2021 will be declared as non-est. Now, what the proposed amendment has done, it's a retrospective amendment. So now that this subsection has been omitted, which means that if any infirmity is there in the orders passed post 1st of April 2021, now this amendment seeks to overcome that infirmity and save those assessment orders from being declared as null and void. It's a very interesting amendment, and having been given the retrospective effect, I would like my experts to come in and just to throw some light over its applicability and retrospectivity of this amendment. Now I would like to invite Dr. Gupta and Dr. VP Gupta ji.
Satyajit, are you done with all the amendments, the key amendments here?
So basically, yeah, basically, sir, I have identified 4 points in 144B, and these are it. Yeah.
And these are the 4 ones. So you can start with the
these
first
were the
one.
4 ones.
Yeah, the draft assessment order shall not be given to the. So starting with that. So whoever is the expert, please, coordinate. Please coordinate.
Dr. Gupta and Dr. VP.
Rakesh, will you?
Some issue I want to point out about what has been said before. 148 returns were already covered under the existing 144B. So, that should be noted, because it somehow I got the impression that it was not earlier covered and has been now covered. Even earlier, the scheme which is currently in 144B, when 147 notices are issued and return is either furnished under 148 or not furnished, both cases are covered under the existing faceless scheme. So that is one point I want to make. And the second point about the draft order, the only thing is we have changed the name from draft order to income or loss determination proposal.
That's
because draft order is only for the eligible assessee, but income or loss determination proposal also has to go to the taxpayer as a show cause notice. It's not that it is not going to the taxpayer. If there is a variation prejudicial to the assessee, so it will go to the assessee as a show cause notice instead of going as a draft order. So that is a change I just wanted to clarify.
Yes. Rakesh?
Sir, there's a couple of things.
Yes.
Draft assessment order, I may not be correct. Now, under those assessments which were made under section 143, 3A, 3B, 3C, now that was required to be served. But under section 144B, once it came, then the variations from the draft assessment order were alone to be communicated to the assessee to elicit his response. So the position with respect to draft assessment order perhaps has not undergone a change in old 144B and new 144B. Number one. Number two, now regarding subsection 9, now seems to have been consigned with effect from 1/4/2021. So it may impact the cases which are already before Honorable High Court, where the assessees have sought nullifications of the assessment order because of the non-observance of the requirement of subsection 1 to subsection 8 of section 144B. But then even that day also this point was raised either by Tarandeep, I do not remember, that even the horse subsection 1 or subsection 8, if assessment orders have been passed, without observing the principles of natural justice, or there is a palpable lack of jurisdiction in assuming jurisdictions to proceed 143.3. Now on that score, it was there earlier also and it can be filed. Even now, even subsection 9 is not there on the statute. So these 2 points I just wanted to make.
No, I didn't understand your first point. Second point, of course, we discussed that, law of natural justice is still to be followed. But Dr. Gupta, what was your first point? 143, 3A, 3BC is the faceless scheme as a part of the scheme, not as a part of the act.
No. I do recollect that 144B was brought from 1/4/2021.
Yes, right.
So draft assessment order, was required to be served to the assessee in 143, 3A, 3B, 3C, not under section 144B. And in my respectful submissions, High Court also were probably swayed by this, as if the draft assessment order was to be served under section 144B, whereas according to me, only the variations only the variations alone were to be communicated by show cause notice under section 144B and not the service of the draft assessment order. That is what I just wanted.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Nee, you see, may I add something? See, as far the draft assessment order, draft is concerned, earlier the opportunity was to be given as at the stage of draft order. Now the opportunity is being given at the earlier stage, because the assessing officer will prepare the statement of the loss or income or loss variation, and that opportunity will be given to the SCC at that stage itself. So principally, I don't think that there is a difference in that way, as Vashni sir had rightly explained. The earlier the opportunity was at the later stage when the draft order is prepared. Now the opportunity is being given prior to that stage, when the assessing officer will prepare the statement of the variation of the income or loss declaration, and then the opportunity has to be given to the assessing in case there is a variance. So principally, there is not much difference, but the only practically the issue may come in what way these variations will be reflected in the show cause notice, because earlier when the draft order is served, so one is very clear that this is the addition, this is the income, this is how now finally income he has to determine. So the things will be more apparent and clear. Definitely this is going to be done. Now the assessing officer may not quantify or may just mention the point that I want to make addition on this. So some sort of guidelines have to be there, that he has to very specifically determine the variance and say that now your returned income as compared to the assessed income will be so much, and these will be the additions. So that if it is done by way of guidelines to the assessing officer, that should serve the purpose. That is one thing I will assist in that way. Now, sir, there are other few things in regard to this matter. They are very small things, just for understanding purpose also, session point also. Sir, the assessing officer assessment unit will prepare the statement of the declaration of income or loss. In case there is no variation, then that statement will be prepared and sent to the National Assessment Center. And in case there is a variation, then the show cause notice will be issued by the AO itself through the National Assessment Center. And then after the response comes from the SSE, then he will prepare the income or loss statement. So there are two types of income and loss declaration. One where there is no variation, one where there is a variation. But the National Assessment Center has the option in both the cases to refer the matter to the review unit. So when there is no variation, so I could not understand what is the purpose of referring to the review unit, whether the review unit, because as per the language which has been used in these clauses, review unit does not appears to have power to increase the variations, in fact, because that says that review unit will go into the proposal of the assessing officer, proposed variations. So that is what my understanding, as per the language, the review unit will only consider what the variations have been proposed by the assessment unit and will not increase that. If the review unit is not going to increase that, then there is no point in referring the statement when there is no variation to the review unit. One point was that. And in case there is a variation, then also the National Assessment Center has an option to direct the assessing officer to finalize the assessment on that basis. So that would mean that even if the assessment unit has prepared a variation, and still the National Assessment Center will direct him to prepare the draft order instead of sending to the review unit. So it will be better if the variation is being done. Then in all the cases, the matter is reviewed by the review unit. So that is what my second session is in regard to these things. Now there are some procedural points I just want to say. That one is that regarding the notice, when the first notice is served, earlier the provision was saying that 15 days time has to be given to the SSE for responding that. Now that 15 days time has been done away, and it says within the specified time. So our experience last year has been, I hope that things in the coming time will improve. But the last year experience has been that many times the time was given just 2 days, 3 days, and that also maybe notice is issued on Saturday and reply is to be given by Sunday evening. That is what happened in the last year. Maybe that was the first year. We will still, I hope that things will improve. But the provision should not be like that. It should be at least 15 days. Because at the first notice itself, the department expects that in the first notice, the points are mentioned that there is a proposal that so and so points, your assessment is being taken up, you are requested to clarify and give support. So preparing a support for all those points which are mentioned in the notice may definitely take some time, particularly in the case of corporate assessees. So their language should be that at least not less than 15 days. And second point in this context, there is no power for extension of time as far as the first notice is concerned. There is second notice or there is a show cause notice, there is a power to extend the time on making the application to the SSC by the SSC. But as far as the first notice is concerned, there is no provision for the extending the time also. That is my another point I just want to. I think that's all. I just want.
Vacha sir, just to add, I'll just like to add one point what Gupta ji has said. My only request is that still there is so much secrecy being maintained in this 144B. I will just like to suggest that is it possible that some sort of order sheet is maintained in this faceless assessment proceedings also, which is shared with the SSC at the end of the matter? For example, let's take that review unit. SSC is not even aware whether the matter has gone to the review unit and what are the comments of the review. Those review unit comments may be in favor of the SSC also. Why isn't those review unit comments being shared with the SSC? There is absolutely silency in the present procedure, the provisions also. Same goes with the verification unit. Whether a verification has taken place, there should be, in nutshell, I want to convey that there should be a system of order sheet which is being shared with the SSC, even in a faceless assessment. Please provide for that.
So let me start with the last question first. Let me start with the last question first.
Sir, may I just add 2 more points, sir?
VP,
let me answer the last question first. So tomorrow you will ask the High Court judges or Supreme Court judges that, you know, after you hear the matter, you have an internal deliberation. So please share us those internal deliberation. I mean, these are our internal matter. I mean, why should we share the final outcome? We are sharing with you, and we are giving you opportunity if anything is against your interest. So let us not go that far. You know, so far as transparency in that sense is concerned, that even if there is no order sheet, but every action is recorded in the sense for internal audit, for internal verification, whether correct procedure was followed or not. You know, whatever action assessing officer is taking, whatever action review unit is taking, whatever action verification unit is taking, everything is recorded on real-time basis. It is not a case where I prepare an order sheet. I mean, I remember I have also worked in the field. There was sometimes used to be the complaint that an assessing officer prepared the order sheet post facto. You know, there is no such possibility now under faceless scheme. So this is actually a good move in the sense that to that extent, there is complete accountability of every action that is being taken by any officer. On the review unit, Gupta ji, I think the review unit is probably can give a suggestion, and suggestion could also be that you increase the income. I think that part also we need to see. Probably I was just trying to see if that income is increased, then again that show cause is given or not. I think that probably may be missing. So I have noticed it now. So we probably need to examine that.
Earlier it was there, sir.
So I think that
yes, sir.
That
in earlier
so earlier what was there, that review unit is was in the sense also had authority to actually prepare an order. So what was there earlier, that I prepare an order, then review unit will prepare an order. If it is different from my, then it will go to third person. But now we have restored the sanctity of the assessment unit. So assessment unit is the main unit who is, it is his responsibility, it is his discretion to pass the assessment order. The review unit is there to help him a kind of advice. So review unit is more of an advisor now. That advice can be rejected by writing reasons by the assessment unit. So this will bring more faster turnaround of cases, number one. And number two, it will restore the sanctity of assessment unit. And then, of course, the other point was 15 days. I fully agree, sufficient time must be given. I mean, there is no two ways about it. So it is absolutely, important from the perspective of natural justice that proper time is given to the taxpayer to file information if information is requested, and to reply to the show cause notice if a show cause notice is issued. That is well taken, and I'm pretty sure, as I think Gupta ji also referred, that because it was first year, so therefore there was a possibility that less time was given and all that. But with experience, I'm sure that things will smoothen out and proper time will be given to the taxpayer. All that we wanted was that there shouldn't be any time limit in the legislature. These things can be controlled administratively. So that was the idea behind these amendments.
Sir, I have 2 points, sir. So one point is, you said that every action of the assessing officer is recorded on a real-time basis for the purpose of audit. Agreed. Now, what has the past experience shown? Hundreds and hundreds of cases have gone to the high courts all across the country. Or on different counts. A, principle of natural justice, no show cause notice. B, even cases where submissions have not been considered. A notice has been issued without waiting or without appreciating the submissions, orders have been passed. C, I have myself personally filed numerous representations, complaints on the link provided by the officer, that wherever you have a grievance, please do that. No effect, no result. What has happened to the assessing officer? What has he done? Why has he so done? What is the remedial measure? People have been left either to go to the High Court or face the music before the CITP. Now, if this is an area which needs a lot of strengthening. And I don't know if a real-time basis internal audit is now being brought in with a different color or with a different things will be different. But if the results are to be seen, I don't think department gets more than 4 out of 10 on how faceless has been handled so far, with almost practically every other case going to the High Court. So that is one area. I think that's where. And secondly, I feel that there has to be somebody who has to respond to the grievance, because nobody is going to file a grievance just for nothing. So if I say I'm not being given an opportunity at that point of time, somebody has to respond. If it's not the assessing officer, somebody else. So this is an area which needs a lot of strengthening, and this is the area where a lot of flack has come to the department in faceless proceedings. If this is strengthened, I think a lot of. Second point is, now once we get the personal hearing, which is mandatory, now who is going to take the personal hearing? Is it going to be the AO who's actually doing the assessment, or is it going to be somebody else? Because if the AO who's doing the assessment takes the personal appearance, I mean, one part of it is gone, that faceless, one part of faceless aspect as such is gone. Then you can call it a virtual assessment, not a faceless assessment.
See, your first point is an administrative issue. There is no two ways about it, that administratively these issues must be addressed and cases should not go to the court. Now, if there is higher litigation because the law is not clear, that is one aspect. If there is higher litigation because, see, for example, that hearing should be provided in all cases, or it should be discretionary to the assessing officer. Now, that was something which was probably law was not clear. So for that reason, people were going to the High Court, and that law should be addressed, which has been addressed. So that was a legal intervention needed so that these litigations should be avoided and natural justice is followed. Now, all other points other than this virtual hearing, all other points that you have raised is something concerned with administrative, not which does not require legal intervention. So I will not like to comment on that because that is outside my jurisdiction. But there is no two ways, absolutely. Those issues have to be addressed administratively, because that is certainly not the intention of the CBDT or the Finance Ministry, that these cases should go to the High Court and natural justice is not respected. That is certainly not the intention, and that should be addressed. So your second point about virtual hearing is, I think there is something that you you blur the image or something, and then you carry out the hearing. So therefore, it may still remain faceless hearing and not virtual hearing.
Sir, one point I just wanted to add more. Sir, after the final order, has been prepared and that order is sent to the National E-Assessment Center, then what the relevant clause says that on receipt of the final order from the assessment unit, the National Assessment Center shall serve the demand notice, penalty notice, along with the determination of the tax on demand. Sir, unfortunately, I don't know what has been the reasons. Last year, our experience has been very bad in the sense that assessment order income is determined at a particular level, whereas the computations have been made totally in a different way. In many cases, even in case of charitable trust, assessment order says nil, and as demand computation shows heavy demands. Maybe for any mistakes sort of things, the refund is not considered, demand is wrongly, or total income is wrongly mentioned. So this has been the position in many cases. So now also I don't know what will be the procedure in between for determination of the demand, but there should be some guidelines or some system of checking that the demand raised or computation made should not be inconsistency with the income which is assessed in the assessment order. So
sorry,
that
Gupta ji, this is also an administrative issue. I request you to take up with the administration. I won't be able to answer that.
ठीक है. गुप्ता जी,
some sort of guidelines can be there.
गुप्ता जी,
yes,
हो गई बात. देखिए, see, हमारा the code of conduct here that we are following is that once we have had our say, then we will not come back and further argue. So if once you get your opportunity, you have made your point, then we have the second opportunity is gone. And let's keep it like, otherwise it will be a never ending process. You'll understand. I hope you'll understand. Now, what is the next, Taran? Is it your point?
Yes,
It is mine, sir. It is mine, sir.
Yeah. Taran,
14A, sir, one or two issues which I have identified. Now, although the amendment specifically states, now the issue is that there were various precedents that if there's no exempt income, then 14A provisions cannot be invoked, whereas department in their circular had a different view. Now, although the amendment specifically states that it is with effect from 1/4/22, that is 22-23 assessment year, but the memorandum, the insertion in form of explanation states in the memorandum, they say that provision of this section shall be deemed to have always applied. Sorry, this is the statute. In the explanation, they say provision of this section shall be deemed to have always applied. And memorandum states in order to make legislative intent clear and to make it free from any misrepresentation. So the issue will still arise as Marshal sir will kindly appreciate. किसी assessment में assessing officer को कुछ नहीं मिलता था, एक 14A जरूर मिलता था addition करने के लिए. Is it still? Please make it very clear whether what is your intention. Is it retrospective? You want to invoke it retrospectively? है intention, then it's a different matter. अगर intention नहीं है, because of the language used in the explanation and in the memorandum, the assessing officers will use it retrospectively. Please clarify. This is nothing new for 14A because you have been in, provisions have been made in form of proviso that it is earlier when 14A was introduced, that to restrict its applicability to old years. And lastly, sir, there has been a change in subsection 1, wherein you have made it notwithstanding an insertion. I was not able to understand that. Is the intention now to make, for example, there were cases of special computational provisions, insurance companies, tonnage tax, wherein or other provisions of, let's say, MAT, wherein 14A provisions could not be invoked because of the language used in those sections. Now, because of the subsection 1 amendment, wherein you have made it notwithstanding, is it यहाँ पे intention memorandum से कहीं निकल नहीं रही? Is that your intention that even for those special computational provisions 14A will apply? These are the two issues which I was able to identify, and I leave it to the experts. And for this, the experts were Salil Kapoor Saab and VP Gupta Saab.
I think point you have already made. So
excellent point made already.
Yes.
And I think the first point also needs some clarification that from which assessment year it is going to apply.
Yes, sir, we don't have Kapoor Saab pinned on the main page. Please, Kapoor Saab को main page पे pin करिए.
Sir, मैं जहाँ हूँ ठीक हूँ. Mr. Washington will be able to explain it that what is the intention from which assessment year, because there is a contradiction in the memo which says that it will be applicable from so and so date, and whereas in the explanation which has been added, it says it has always been the same. So that's a point which is again going to cause litigation. Mr. Washington, any?
I think that we discussed with respect to section 37 earlier in our last meeting. It is exactly the same. What happened in section 37 has exactly happened here, and we discussed that we have traced that intention of the legislation has always been this, even for the past years, but courts can on merit can take their position that before 1st April 2022 they probably can take the position on merit how they want to how you want to argue your cases before the courts. If it was retrospective, just like section 40 amendment is retrospective, then everything is even applicable for the past year without doubt. Now we don't want to disturb past cases which are before court, but then there should be presumption in anybody's favor. Neither there is a presumption in the favor of the revenue, nor there is a presumption in the favor of the taxpayer that because this is from 1st April 2022, that means before that date it was the other way around. Even that presumption should not be there. So our view is the past cases would be adjudicated on merit. Let them be adjudicated on merit. But in future, this position is clear. So that is what the concept of amendment, from 1st April 2022, in contrast to section 40 amendment, which is retrospective in nature.
Taradeep, the CBT has taken care of us all professionals so that we should get some mitigation on this of at least for some few years.
Yes, sir.
So somebody said that, now dividend is gone, then what is the use? See, it is, let us try to understand. The dividend was one factor, maybe a major
factor. There could be many. There could be many other ways where the exempt income is there.
Even today, many interest income from unit are exempt. So it is not that everything is now nothing is exempt. I mean, that is not the situation.
The share coming from a firm, that's not taxable in the personal hand. There was litigation on those issues also. But anyway, as Mr. Vastey said, yes, this is a still open area for the applicability of the year. Let the courts decide on that. Yes, Gupta sir, आप कुछ point बोल रहे थे?
नहीं, ठीक है, नहीं, it is okay. It is okay.
अच्छा साहब, subsection 1 का शायद वो भी एक इशू था, उसमें अगर कुछ है आपका कमेंट?
हमारा पर्पस वो टनेज टैक्स को वो करने का तो नहीं है, अब वो होता है तो वो देखना पड़ेगा. We will have to examine it. That was not the purpose. Purpose was only when unnecessary section 37 was brought into the act and that interplay was being done. So idea was that that was the idea, but nothing to do with tonnage tax or anything like that.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, उसमें कोई exempt तो होता नहीं है ना, वो एक calculation mechanism है. Even for insurance company, life insurance company, if we have a separate mechanism on actuarial method of calculation of taxable income, it doesn't exempt anything. It only says that actuarial basis पे उसकी calculation होगी income और ये 12.5% tax लगेगा. But it doesn't make anything exempt.
इंश्योरेंस कंपनी के केस में दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट को बोलना पड़ा कि 14 अप्लाई नहीं करता. So matter went to that extent. In case of insurance company.
अच्छा, okay.
So let's not name the SSC, but I represented Delhi High Court had to say that 14A is not applicable to 44.
Right.
And same issue arose in MAT also, that they said 115 JB, 14 and 8D are not applicable.
Okay.
When something has gone to High Court, then it becomes public. Therefore, you need not be circumspect.
Sir, Ajay sir, आगे चले और you have some
point? बिल्कुल चलिए, बिल्कुल चलो आगे next point पे.
Next 37 का था, which I think Varsha साहब has argued. Varsha साहब ये हमने शायद last time discuss नहीं करा था. You would have taken up in some other meeting.
Okay. इतने सारे चल रहे हैं, पता नहीं याद नहीं रहता किसमें discuss किया है.
नहीं सर, thank you. But आप ये जो issue है सब इसमें now again here an explanation has been added. My only point over here was that the legislative intention, just for benefit of all, is that now they want that an explanation has been added in section 37, and the explanation intends that under explanation 1 shall exclude and shall be deemed to have always included the expenditure incurred by an SSC for any purpose which is an offense under or which is prohibited by any law for the time being in force in India or outside India, to provide any benefit or perquisite in whatever form to a person, whether or not carrying on the business or exercise of a profession, and acceptance of such benefit or perquisite by such person is in violation of any law or rule or regulation or guidelines as the case may be, and to compound an offense under any law for the time being in force. No, sir, the memorandum has if you see the memorandum, there was a referral order passed by Bombay Tribunal, wherein the view of PHL Pharma, because the memorandum talks about those pharmaceutical companies wherein a practice was going on where they used to lure the doctors for selling their products. that referral order has been picked up in the memorandum as a basis for legislative intent. There were few things which were not brought before the Bombay Tribunal when they referred the matter to larger bench. For example, there's a Delhi High Court judgment. The Delhi High Court said in case of Boston Scientific that the medical ICMR guidelines are not relevant. And what had happened was ITAT used those ICMR guidelines to say that there's a illegal transaction was carried out. The Delhi High Court said it is not illegal vis-a-vis the payer. So a view was already there that may not have been pointed out to the tribunal when they referred the matter to a larger bench. But now, to what extent is it right that we use a referral order to bring in the legislature when the matter is still sub judice? Second, by making it such wide, sir, do you intend that the assessing officers are going to decide whether it is an illegal activity under some other law? We have already seen what happens when our assessing officers start interpreting some other criminal law as to whether it is an offense over there or not. For example, sir, there was a MP High Court judgment. Under Section 37, they held that when a ransom is being paid to release a director, it is an allowable expense. Giving of ransom may not be illegal. Receiving is illegal. So assessing, do we expect the assessing officers to apply their mind on the applicability of other laws, whether they are going to be illegal activities or not? That's my point, and I'll then leave it to my experts.
See, that particular decision of Delhi High Court may not be referred by the memorandum, but the fact is that now that the law has been made clear that this is the position, and even though that MP High Court also. Now, with this change in law, even that payment of ransom will not be allowed as deduction, yes, because ransom is, is an illegal expenditure. So that is very clear. I mean, you don't have to see from, only that it may be a violation from recipient perspective, but it may not be violation from giver perspective. Yes. So you don't have to see from that angle. So now the law is clear going forward.
Even in criminal law, even there is an offense at the end of the giver also. So you cannot dissect the transaction, at least in case of ransom, like in case of bribe. If it is said that the receiver, is to be at the receiving and not the giver, I mean, both are committing the offense.
I think the point made by probably, he was referring to Madhya Pradesh High Court. So Madhya Pradesh High Court may have erred. That's a different matter.
Yes.
We are not onto that. We are.
But sir, the point made by Tarandi, that now the assessing officer will decide whether this is an offense or not. There can be so many situations under various laws. The assessing officer has the power now to decide whether it was an offense under that law or not, even if some litigation is pending or some notice is given or not. But it is the decision of the officer to decide now.
Yeah, obviously, if whether it is a violation of law, that determination has to be done by the assessing officer. If law says that violation of any law regulation is not to be allowed as deduction, then definitely it is assessing officer who will interpret that particular provision of the law.
Salil sir,
Sandeep sir has made it very clear. Now it is the assessing officer who will decide.
No, but then Salil sir, the decision of the assessing officer is subject to judicial scrutiny.
Absolutely.
If later on, suppose if the law of that, kindly sir, if the law of that land now sets the thing right, now that will have to be given effect to by the successive appellate authority here also. But then why only assessing officer? Now kindly see the plight of the practicing chartered accountants, sir. I am representing them. Now if they have to do audit, under the tax audit, they have to certify. So they are expected to be well versed with laws of all countries, the global laws. And then they have to certify. So, but then kindly see this explanation is there to explanation one. Now, this is probably perhaps unique occasion when one explanation is there to explain one explanation.
Budget. ID 835
This is unfair.
Somebody is speaking.
Off कर ले सर.
विनोद देखो भाई सबको स्विच ऑफ करो जो बोल रहे हैं.
So ये नहीं, डॉक्टर गुप्ता ने सही बात कही है. ये अभी तो ट्रस्ट पे आएंगे तो पता नहीं ट्रस्ट के अंदर तो कितनी प्रोविजो है, उस प्रोविजो का एक्सप्लेनेशन प्रोविजो है. तो वो तो आप वो क्या करें, वो तो आई थिंक रेवेन्यू सेक्रेटरी आल्सो सेड यस्टरडे कि भाई आपका इनकम टैक्स एक्ट ऐसा है तो उसमें इस तरह से है, ये तो नया एक्ट लिखना पड़ेगा. देखिए अब कब होगा, कब क्या है, वो क्या कहते हैं
सर हमारे लाइफ टाइम में तो मत करिएगा सर, जैसे तैसे कुछ समझ में आने लगा है।
राकेश, इसका मतलब राकेश 40-50 साल और
कयामत हो, नहीं वो कहते हैं ना, खुदा करे कि कयामत हो तू आए तो नए हो जाएगा।
राकेश इसका मतलब 50 साल तक कुछ ना हो, तुम ये को वर्किंग लाइफ टाइम में, नॉट योर लाइफ टाइम अनदर 50 इयर्स, ऐसा मत करो यार सर। इसमें खाली मैं एक आई जस्ट वांटेड टू बट इन फॉर अ सेकंड एंड देन वी मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट. So therefore, the second says, the second subclause, clause 2 says, person procured by any such person is in violation of any law, rule or regulation or guideline. Now, what is a guideline? Guideline is to be issued by who? Does it have to have a statutory backing, or can, let us say, the ITAT Bar Association issue a guideline कि ये गलत है, and that guideline, no,
under some act.
No, so my point is, when you say rule, regulation, or guideline,
issued under act, that is
you should it may be probably to be qualified.
But then that,
or you think it takes the color of an act and takes the color of a rule and takes the color of an act. I mean, these are all points. I think one doesn't need to say that. One should simply say violation of any law under any statutory rule, regulation, or maybe add the word statutory. That's all.
पहले यही तो था सर, दिक्कत होने लगी तो अब ये किया।
अच्छा, अब दूसरी चीज ये है कि compound of an offense, to compound an offense under any law for the time being in force in India or outside. Now, compound an offense, a traffic challan, essentially, is it a compound? It's a compoundable offense.
Yes.
The traffic challans is gone, is also gone. I mean, such like offenses are gone. Where there is a punishment prescribed and which is compounded, that is an offense according to this, right? Okay.
I mean, that is what the law is. That is what the proposal in the law is. It may, you may find it a bit harsh. That's a different thing, but that is what the law is.
That's okay, sir. That's okay. That's okay. I mean, as long as there is clarity, it's fine.
Next, before we come to the trust, sir, thoda sa Satya will take up the cryptocurrency.
Virtual digital asset, yes. Sir.
Virtual. Before we come to the.
वो section 40 में कुछ नहीं देखना तुमने?
40 में तो explanation है.
सेस वाला सर,
उसको छोड़ो सर, उसमें
ठीक नहीं, sorry
कुछ नहीं.
That we all were claiming against our inner conscience. I mean, that must be confessed.
Yes, correct.
So everybody started swimming with the tide after seeing Rajasthan and Bombay High Court's decision. Additional grounds, I mean, they came in abundance, and so it has been settled not fairly.
That is fair, sir.
Yes, sir. So now, sir, we start with section 115 BBH, that is virtual digital asset. Now, VDAs are things of modern era. So there has been a phenomenal increase in these transactions. And so there was a need for a specific tax regime to capture the tax incidence on these transactions. Now, in existing scenario, there was a lack of clarity on such transactions. Under what definition they will head, they will be falling, whether they're a capital asset or not, under what head of income they will be falling, what will be the tax rate applicable on the transactions. So the government has brought in section 247A to define what are virtual digital assets, what is the definition of virtual digital asset, and which is a very broad definition, including, if I may read the definition for the benefit of all. Section 247A states, any information or code or number or token not being Indian currency or any foreign currency generated through cryptographic means or otherwise, very important, or otherwise, by whatever name called, providing a digital representation of value exchanged with or without consideration, with the promise or representation of having inherent value, or functions as a store of value or a unit of account, including its use in any financial transaction or investment, but not limited to investment scheme, and can be transferred, stored, or traded electronically. A non-fungible token or any other token of similar nature by whatever name called, any other digital asset as may be notified by central government in official gazette in this behalf. It is further proposed to provide that central government may by notification in the official gazette exclude any digital asset from definition of virtual digital asset, subject to such conditions as may be specified therein. Now, as per section 115 BBH, these VDAs have been taxed at the rate 30%. And only the benefit of cost of acquisition will be allowed, and no other reduction whatsoever will be allowed, including loss from trust.
विनोद, ये साइलेंस करो यार, किसको कहां से आ रही है आवाजें?
Now, in addition to taxing the VDAs at 30%, the government has invoked another provision for the purpose of reporting of the transactions. How will government know what transfers have been undertaken? So a corresponding amendment has been made to 194S, by way of which that these transactions will be reported. There is a liability to deduct TDS of 1% on the transfer of these transactions. Plus, taking it further, in addition to the TDS, the government has also made amendment in section 56 to 10, whereby they have included the VDAs, the virtual digital assets, as in the definition of property. So, in case of gift of such VDAs to any person, then the tax incidence will be applicable in the case of the recipient under section 56 to 10. Now, this being uncharted territory, there has been uncertainty in the minds of the taxpayers, and a lot of questions remain unanswered. So I will go one by one, and I'll pick up firstly I'll pick up the questions relating to section 115 BBH and 247A, which are relevant. Now for 247A and 115 BBH, firstly I would like to pose a question: under what head such income will be taxable? Because it is unclear, and this question has been raised in many forums. Under what head such income will be captured and taxed? Secondly, another question which is running for a while now, that whether intra head set off, for example, if a person earns profit on one sale of one virtual asset and loss on sale of another virtual digital asset, whether that netting off will be allowed or not. That is a very important. Also, netting off between two different kind of virtual assets. For example, profit from Bitcoin and loss on NFT, whether such netting off will be allowed or not. That question remains unanswered. Thirdly, my question is whether loss suffered. Now, for example, a person has traded in virtual digital assets and he has suffered some loss up to financial year 21-22. Now, whether this loss will be eligible to be set off against any other income in subsequent years. That is also, I would like my experts and Varshney sir to answer this question. Also, there is another very important aspect which I would like to bring to the notice. Now, the definition of VD under 247 is very wide. So, and the usage of word or otherwise, cryptographic means or otherwise, it creates a lot of controversy. For example, if I earn reward points, I use my credit card, I earn reward points. Now the reward points have some value, and subsequently if I redeem those reward points, I get something in return. So whether that redemption will also be covered under the virtual digital asset definition, and whether that reward points